What is up, world? Today we are talking about using your voice. Taking up space, not being afraid to take up space and not holding back. This is something I've talked to a lot of people, especially being in sales. A lot of people. I often see this come up with the women I talk to, but there's this desire to want to speak up, to share ideas, to share opinions, to not hold back, to express themselves, because they want to feel more like themselves, right? To express themselves, but then there is this instant sort of reaction that happens right away when they have that impulse to do something. Then the self-doubt activates and they hold back, because it's much safer to hold back and not let everyone, what's that saying? Like, if you actually open your mouth, then people know how dumb you are, or whatever it is, right? We want to avoid that. We want to avoid that pain. And this is something I've struggled with a lot of my life, of holding back, because what happens when we do that, when we have the desire to speak up and to share, and then we hold back, it builds up inside of us, and it's super frustrating. It becomes extremely limiting, and we sort of steal opportunities from ourselves, opportunities for connection, for relationships, for moving up in the workplace, for bringing new ideas, for innovation and creativity, and it's stifling. And I remember, like, I was in high school, and I remember we had an English class, and we were given the assignment to write a book or a short story, somewhere in between that. And I remember I went to work on that, and I thought to myself, everything I was struggling. Nothing I was coming up with was feeling good enough, wasn't interesting enough, wasn't unique enough. It wasn't good enough, and I couldn't think of something that I wanted to write about. And I think, now knowing back, I was just too afraid to take that chance on myself. And what I wound up doing was, instead of creating my own, ideas and trusting myself, I took the plot line of a movie I'd seen, one that I knew wasn't that well watched. I turned that basically, and I based my story off of that, basically, and turned that in as my assignment. And probably was a little too well done, because I got a really good grade, and I have a twin brother in another English class who the teacher actually shared with his class about my story. I still feel guilty about that. Sorry, Mr. Dinkler. But I realized, like, I look back at these moments in my life, right, and where I was too afraid to take a chance on myself, where I held back and I stifled my voice. And again, when that came up in college, if someone, you're in those big auditoriums. I remember I was in a philosophy class, and the professor would ask for, what are you guys' thoughts on this, right? They want us to share and express our opinions. And I would just kind of hold back, like many of us do. And what I wanted was to speak up and to share my voice, but I was too afraid. For me, it was being too afraid of being judged, of being rejected, of being seen as immature, or not smart enough, or not insightful enough, or as naive, or whatever it is. Like, that tends to show up for us, whether it be in school, and in the workplace, in a social setting with friends. Like, a lot of us tend to hold back. And I realize, and it's odd, because it doesn't always happen. At least in my instance, it was when I was lacking certainty. Like, when I lacked the certainty, I was too afraid to take the risk to look, because I didn't want to seem or look a certain way. And what's sad about that, when we do this, when we hold back, when we don't share our thoughts, when we don't share our opinions, when we don't share our ideas, we can never know what would possibly come from that experience. We lose out on a lot of really great ideas and connections and relationships and opportunities because of our own unwillingness to be vulnerable, to put ourselves out there, and to refuse to hold back, and to be willing to take up that space. You know, especially as women, like, it's sort of been seeded into us over generations that we should be pleasant and ladylike and just be, you know, sort of there and kind of quiet. And so a lot of women, I find, we'd rather play that card rather than take a chance and assert ourselves and be certain and stand up for what we believe in and share our opinions and take up space. Don't be afraid to take up space. Use your voice in those moments where you feel that impulse, where you have that idea, where you have that opinion, you have that thought, and you have an opportunity to share it. Then ask yourself, and you feel that impulse of, oh, maybe I shouldn't, maybe I should just hold back. Ask yourself, what would my most courageous self do in this moment? What would my most courageous self do? And do that. Because I believe that your courageous self will want to use your voice. I remember I was listening to a podcast, and I'll leave on this note that I don't remember who it was, and I'll butcher the way she said it, but essentially she said, if you have been invited into the room, then you have a seat at the table. And if you have a seat at the table, then you have a responsibility to use your voice and to share and to speak up at that table. So think about that the next time you have an opportunity to be yourself and to share, to express yourself, and to use your voice. Because your voice is the root of your power. You get to use it. You get to use it. So don't be afraid to. Show up. Be yourself. Express yourself. Take up space.